everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Snark Bait. Things are going to be a little bit different today. We have an incredibly special guest. Sophie is out of office. She's taking care of a couple of things with her family, but regardless, we are so happy to have Olivia, our researcher, joining us on the mic today. Olivia, how are you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me. I am good. I am cold here in New York City. I hope it's a little nicer by you, Christy. But yeah, my skin is suffering. But this, I'm looking forward to talking about our topic today with you.
Well, first of all, even if your skin is suffering and you are suffering, your makeup looks absolutely stunning. You guys,
Thank you.
Olivia has the fancy cameras, and so when we were kind of trying to sub in, like who was gonna do what this week when Sophie was out, Olivia pinged me on the side and she's like, "Hey, listen, I don't know why I'm giving you the Sophie voice. Hey, listen, I have that camera. So if you want, I can absolutely sub that in and we can do the fancy cameras together if that works for you." I was like, you know what? You're such a damn professional. Olivia is an actor by trade, actor by day, voiceover work by day, researcher by night. If you guys don't already know, she helped us start our Substack, substack.com/at snarkbaitpod. And things are just happening over at Snarkbait, and we're so happy to have you on the team. You've been such a joy to work with, and I know every time you're on the mic with either Sophie or myself, the listeners already feel like they know you because you're so ingratiated in a lot of our episodes. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. And really, I'm inspired by you guys. When I saw y'all on the fancy camera and how good
Oh,
you looked, I was like, I need this for my self tapes now. Um, so yeah, and if any casting directors are baby snarks, hit me up if you need a basic white girl. I'm here for you.
what's
For
your
your
website? Do you want to plug it?
Oh, Olivia Hewitt NYC.com. But I'm not just local to NYC. I can go anywhere, you guys.
Yeah.
Anywhere you want me, you can have me.
She,
Not to make this about myself.
she's up for consumption, everyone. But
I
no,
am your
Olivia,
product.
yes, Olivia's so bright and comedic, and that's the reason why our Substacks are so funny.
Oh,
And
thank
Olivia
you.
obviously helped write our notes for today's episode, so we are so excited to get in. But I guess before we dive in, Olivia, what are your thoughts on Emily Weiss of Glossier? Are you a Glossier consumer yourself? What were your initial thoughts and feelings before kind of diving into this?
Yeah, so I have never been a consumer of Glossier, but back in the day when it was at its height, I think I was in college. My girlfriends were obsessed with it. I interned here in New York in the summers, and my girlfriends would come visit me. And like one of the first places they wanted to go was Glossier. And it was like in the summer, so it's 100 degrees outside. And I'm like, I'm not waiting in line for this pink store to get Vaseline. So you guys go ahead. I'll meet you after. And they would spend forever in line, come back. And I'm like, oh, what did you get? They had the big pink, thing,
Bubble
bag.
bags. Yep.
Yes. And we're like, let's do a unboxing, a haul. And they got literally one product. And I was like, you guys, how much did you spend here for this one lip balm? Come on now. But and we'll get into it, but it's obviously more about the experience. It just wasn't something that I was wanting to be a part of at the time.
Right.
And I randomly read this book about the company a couple years ago, and I don't know if I was inspired by my girlfriends or something, but I like nonfiction books about like bad businesses
Yeah.
and girl bosses. And I read this a couple years ago, and so now I'm glad that it's being put to use. And I kind of reread it the past couple of days, but
Yeah.
and we'll reference it a lot. It's called Glossy by Marissa Meltzer. It is here.
Yeah, if you
Uh,
guys are on video, youtube.com/ at snarkbaitpod, glossy by, yeah, the last name Meltzer. Yeah, and
mhm.
Olivia, she often referenced Meltzer's work in this entire episode because, I mean, this author literally studied the business front, center, back. So
For
I,
years, for years, yeah.
yes. And I personally knew who Emily Weiss was from my first introduction to her on Lauren Conrad's MTV's The Hills.
Yes.
Super intern from New York City while Whitney and Lauren were sitting in Teen Vogue in LA. Emily came in like a bull in a china shop and showed them how it was really done. So that was kind of how I became introduced to her, not realizing when Glossier blew up. I too remember living in San Francisco at the time. I believe, if I can remember correctly, I might be confusing this with the other millennial brands like I feel like Everlane at one point was kind of a millennial brand, Outdoor Voices,
Hmm.
Casper
Hmm.
Mattresses. We've talked about this, like doing a millennial brands episode, and we thought a better way to land this episode from a research perspective and just like conciseness, succinctness was just to focus on Glossier. But I feel like the millennial brand in 2017, 2018, it was like a post 2016 era, pre 2020 era, when you
Hmm.
had these like colorful, cute, kind of I don't know, clean and chic marketing.
A sans serif. Everything had the same exact font.
Yes, and everything was kind of like a pastel color. You go on the Instagram, there was no reels at the time, no video. It was just like a static post of a muted pink or like a muted green. And I feel like Glossier really was a product of its time. But like you
Hmm.
said, you would have your girlfriends waiting outside in the bitter cold, freezing weather in New York City, wanting to get their pink bag and some Vaseline. But I think part of the success of Glossier was the hype of it and feeling like you were part of the trends, that you were
Exactly.
a cool girl. So, and I'm also really fascinated by women-owned businesses because I think there are few that are really successful. You guys know what I mean. Like, I mean, when it comes to like huge tech conglomerates or big companies, it's always
Hmm.
male founded. But when you think about Whit Wolf Herb, the founder and former CEO of Bumble, and Emily Weiss with Glossier, and the former founder of Reformation and Away Luggage, like they're all female owned businesses. And I think often there are spotlights on them and exposés on
Yes.
Business Insider. And you have to kind of ask yourself too, are they being spotlit because they're a crumbling brand and they treat their employees like shit? Or is it because they want to focus on a female founder and all of her flaws?
Right. And that's like a lot of the central question at the end of the book that Marissa wrote of like, would this same thing happen if this were a man? And what kind of expectations come with being a female founder? And that relationship to the customer can almost at the same time be their downfall, which is really interesting to think about.
Yes, that's such a
Yeah.
good point because I feel like the things that we focus on Snarkbait are the parasocial relationships that we as consumers have with our favorite influencers. And even, I'm seeing even today, with the horrible, deplorable acts that ICE is doing and what's been happening to Peretti in Minnesota. It's just horrific. And I think that right now you have a lot of consumers on Instagram demanding answers from their influencers because there is this heightened, intense parasocial
Hmm.
relationship that they feel with these people that they follow day in and day out, watch their stories, buy their affiliate links, all that good stuff. And I think almost with female founders, because the female consumer is feels so parasocial with the founder, it's like they demand excellence from the founder as well. So
Yeah.
it's kind of this, I think there is a bit of, okay, yeah, I'm sure that they fostered not the best work environment, but also what could the same be said if it was a man that founded this business? I don't think so.
Right. Right. And we'll get into it, but it's like Emily herself modeled or fostered or advertised this relationship as like a core of the brand. And so when they, as we'll see, there's faults that occur and are uncovered. It's like that relationship just gets broken. It's impossible to keep a perfect relationship throughout the entirety of a business, especially one that grows this quickly and astronomically.
Right. It's the momentum of the business. It couldn't keep up with the leadership that Emily had really like founded on in whatever it was in like 2014 or like early 2010s.
Hmm.
Um, and like not to make it all about Snark Bait, but I was thinking as I was reading like, all these notes, I was thinking like, okay, if Sophie and I had an expose, what would what would
I would
Olivia
write it. No.
what would Olivia say about what is it like working with us? Would you say like what's the difference between Sophie and I being your bosses? Like what would you say? Not just me being self-interested, not to put you on the spot. This
Yeah, you
wasn't on
guys
the
are
notes.
very similar to Emily Weiss, just like you have this persona, this veneer about you, but on the inside, it's so dark. No. You guys, they're like the best bosses ever. They're hilarious. Honestly, less serious behind the curtain, more silly goose. Um, yeah, just feels like working with your friends, which I am,
Yes, no,
thankfully.
we are friends and you are a great employee and we're happy to have you. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, Emily grew Glossier to a $1.8 billion valuation at its peak. And she finally ended up leaving when it was the height of consumer disgust with girl bosses, as we just mentioned. And she was featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2014. She was included in Times Magazine's Next 100. But in May 2022, so literally almost 4 years ago, stepped down as Glossier CEO and became
Hmm.
executive chairwoman with Kyle Leahy taking over as CEO. So let's talk about her background and like who is the woman that created the brand. And we already know, like I mentioned from watching The Hills, that she comes from this. She seems like very driven, very ambitious, almost intimidating. I remember when I was watching her on The Hills, feeling like this girl would scare the shit out of me because she knows exactly what she's doing. She walks into a room, she can close any deal. You know what you know what I mean? So I
She's
could see, I'm
Alex
like,
Cooper
yeah, she's
of the
Alex
Hills.
Cooper. And I'm thinking also, okay, if she comes in with this ambition, this drive, like who bred this woman and where does she come from? So it comes as no surprise to me. She grew up in Wilton, Connecticut, which is a town that the author Marissa Meltzer writes is one of the state's wealthiest, but quote, whose money is less showy than the rambling homes of nearby New Canaan or the grandeur of Greenwich. And from a young age, Emily knew she had two things. She was entrepreneurial and she was stylish. And I thought this was so funny and cute. As a kid, she bred guppies and she's tried to sell them to a pet store. Did you ever try to have like small businesses, by the way, Olivia, when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, I feel like but it was just amongst my other siblings, and it was always like a competition between me or my younger sister trying to sell something to our older siblings or something.
You kept it in the
Really,
family.
yeah, just fostering those healthy relationships from the start was really important to us. Did,
You
did you have
guys.
any businesses
Um,
that you're
the
passionate about?
typical, yeah, I mean, clearly there's many businesses that I'm passionate about, most importantly this one, but I think when I was young, I did like the good old lemonade stand.
Oh
And I
yeah.
remember we would take like what's that one Minute Maid lemonade, put it into like a
Hmm.
jar and then we would sell it on the street. So that probably wasn't the most cost effective. Cost was far higher than the margin we were picking up, but entrepreneurial nonetheless. So
Hmm.
in high school, Marissa writes that while other kids were wearing mall brands like J. Crew, which like is a really nice brand to be wearing in high school as
Yeah.
well. I didn't wear J. Crew in high
Like I
school.
wasn't allowed to look at it. My that was like
No,
the fancy brand my mom wore.
I wore like
I'm from
Tubi.
Missouri though, you know.
Do you remember Tubi or not Tubi?
T
It's worth the
Tibby?
T. Not I don't.
TIB. That's like a nice too.
No, no, no. It was like in a um pamphlet, and it would come, and you would order on like the magazine. I feel like I'm
Oh.
showing my age. Like you're too young for this, but it came across my desk on TikTok, and I was like, "Well, I forgot about that brand." But in any case, that's what I was wearing. Baby Snarks. You guys know what I'm talking about if you're a millennial. But Emily, on the other hand, she was wearing barrel-shaped Louis Vuitton. How do you pop
Papillon.
papillon handbag, and she wore pointy-toed shoes, all very sophisticated and fashion-forward for a woman of or a young girl of her age. And in high school, she interned for Ralph Lauren for 2 summers and briefly modeled for them, which like I understand now as an adult, Ralph Lauren is a very upscale, like wealthy, old American kind of brand, but I don't think I knew what Ralph Lauren was in high school. I mean, you probably did
No.
because you're stylish.
No, I mean like I'm from Missouri. I just like wasn't I also have an aversion to like malls in general, which is why I couldn't go to
R.I.P. Which I
Glossier.
which I feel like
But
malls are not a thing anymore.
yeah, but like just like that as she will see is so passionate about that whole experience of like going to a store and trying on things. I wasn't into that as much as I enjoyed fashion to the degree that I could from where I was from, but it is crazy that she not only knew what it was, but I was listening to a podcast she was on, and I
Yeah.
guess someone she had was babysitting for a family in this nice neighborhood. The dad worked there, and she's like, I want to work there. I'll start like this summer. And she was literally 15, and she did it for 2 summers. At
Yeah.
15, like I was prepubescent, I believe. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, genuinely, like to kind of have the the chutzpah to ask your, I guess your employer at the time, even though it was just a babysitting job, I want to work for whatever company you're at. That sounds like a cool
Yeah,
brand. I want to work and I want to intern for 2 summers and I want to model. Like that already has that chutzpah and that confidence that many, even women of a much twice her age don't have. So
totally.
the more I read about her, I think I'm just like so inspired and like what a very ambitious, driven woman. It's really cool to see. Um, Let's move on. In 2007, she interned at Teen Vogue in college, and a former fellow low-ranking employee at Condé Nast said that she was dressed to the nines. She would dress better than the editors, and she was still in college. I was like, who is this girl? She would wear Balenciaga heels to work. Like, wow, even intimidating the higher ups. She graduated
Mhm.
NYU in 2007 with a degree in studio art, and in 2010, while working at Vogue, she was 25 years old. She launches a beauty blog called Into the Gloss. And I feel like you have to remember at this time in 2010, Instagram, I think it had just taken off. Like I remember, no, 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 excuse me, had not taken off at this point. Blogs were a big thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
we have a Substack now, like I plugged up top, substack.com/ or at SnarkBayPod. But this was the OG form of writing. You would have a WordPress or a Zanga, if you guys remember, like the really, really early days. And Emily was kind of no different. She would have her normal job at Vogue, but she would wake up at 4 a.m. to work on her site Into the Gloss before heading to her magazine job. And I keep thinking, 2010, she grew up in like the age of 13 going on 30, how to lose a guy in 10 days. We always talk about the magazine job, the fashion editor. Like that was
Hmm.
the job. Did you ever have like a stint of wanting to be a magazine editor or working at a magazine, Olivia?
I like what well I was obsessed with Project Runway. So I had a stint where I wanted to like be in fashion in some way or as a designer or something. So I still do love magazines. I get the newspaper. I love reading the newspaper
Oh,
and
I love
like
that. You're like my dad. That's like so great.
I'm like this counts as reading, right? Like a novel.
Yes.
I feel like I'm getting smarter. Anyway, but yeah, I was ambitious in this way, but not in a way where I did something about it. I would just like sew clothes for my Build-A-Bears.
That's still very, I mean, I can't even sew now, so very impressed by that. So in 2012, Emily had over 200,000 unique visitors per month, and by mid 2016, she had 1.3 million visitors. And I had to think about this conceptually because our brain and attention span is so short now that it takes a lot to divert our attention. And I was like, what shows today have like a million viewers? Because if she had 1.3 million on her website, like how much is that on a Netflix show? And this new show I just started watching, His and Hers on Netflix. Have you seen it?
No, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, so I've heard from many a coworker and my best friend like you need to watch it. I did watch the first episode. It's like hasn't really hooked me in, but regardless, I just Googled it and His and Hers has 1 million viewers. So like one of the biggest Netflix shows right now is equal to what she had at her blog when she was
That's
20 something.
a global streaming site, like
Yes.
and
And
not cable television or yeah.
yeah, and I think this is before we really were able, like our attention span was so short. And I feel like people were really into blogs. Like I used to read blogs too back in the day. And at the height of her blog, she had reached 10 million views a month. And she recalls the first time that an advertiser reached out to put an ad spot on her website. And she said that Lancome spent 5K to be into the Gloss's first advertiser. She said, quote, this was more money than I'd ever had in my life and more money than I'd ever had in my bank account, which like is kind of like, big question mark because you were wearing Gucci
Balenciaga.
Balenciaga heels, intimidating the
That
editors at
costs
whatever
that much.
magazine you were wearing, like, I mean, working at. So, okay, sure, Jan. But well, Emily Weiss realized that the best way to grow her business was not really doing it through traditional media and advertising from her website, even though that could be lucrative in and of itself. But she said that what if I started a product line? What if we just called Taylor up? What if you just started a product line? And she said that, I had been sitting in bathrooms since 2010. I was listening to women talk about products, and she asked herself, well, what if a beauty brand did that? Market researchers would ask consumer questions, but it's not easy to ask a large number of exactly it's not easy to ask a large number of exactly the right consumers. Weiss had created a forum where she could do exactly that. So she started. She already had the market research without having to pay for it through her blog, and which was kind of like a point of intrigue for investors. She was kind of already on the ground talking with these celebrities like Carly Kloss, what's in your bathroom, but understanding like what about their products makes it great for these celebrities. If it's good enough for these celebrities, it could be good enough for our consumer. And how could I kind of recreate, copy and paste that type of playbook into my own brands? But you
Right.
have a note here, right?
Yeah, because I found another note from the book that because just something I didn't know about much about the business of makeup and how usually it just works in the reverse way of like, I want to start a product. Okay, let's do then you do the market research, then you try to get the retailer and sell it to them. But this way, she was getting the market research basically at no cost through her other business. And Big Beauty, and normally their client is the retailer, like a Sephora, an Ulta, Target, whatever. And so they're trying to sell their product to those shelves. But no one was listening to the person that was actually wearing the makeup and what they wanted. All these other bigger beauty brands were making their product for the shelf and not for its actual consumer, which is where that difference is.
That, yes, that's such a good point because I was thinking of the direct to consumer relationship that she cultivated with her audience. She already had this baked in audience, as you said, and she already knew exactly what they wanted through, like you said, the free market research, just a la her website. And I think I was actually following this Instagram creator. Her name is Camille Moore, and she talks about social media marketing and influencing and how it's changed the game of advertising and traditional advertising, and how people like Alex Earl, for instance, she's kind of changing up how influencers are starting to make money rather than having a
Mm,
traditional, okay, I'm an influencer. You can pay me $5,000. I'll hawk Lancome on my Instagram. I'll shill a few products. You pay me $5,000 for that reel. Sure, that's all well and good. Influencers do make a lot of money from doing just that. But Alex Earl has basically taken it to a different level whereby she kind of organically started introducing Poppy in her TikTok videos, her Get Ready's with Me. She would talk about Poppy organically in her videos, in her podcast. And she was a big investor in Poppy. And so when Poppy got sold by Coca-Cola, she had a vested interest in Poppy because she was a heavy investor. So she probably made that transaction alone probably gave her millions and millions and millions of dollars when
mhm.
Coca-Cola purchased Poppy. But what am I getting at here? Basically, what I was saying was Camille Moore was talking about how Rode, for instance, is a brand that was founded and predicated on a direct consumer relationship. And the reason why Rode was able to be purchased by Elf at such a high valuation of $1 billion is really because Rode had so much more growth to be had. Whereas you look at a brand like Makeup by Mario, it has like, I think it's like 250 million in revenue. They're very, very well slated brand. But the reason that Makeup by Mario will be really difficult to sell to a brand like Elf is because it's already done so much work. It's already been sold at
Mhm.
Sephora. Like, what other growth can you do? You've already kind of hit that pillar. And Elf saw Rhoda as like, oh, you're a direct to consumer brand. You're not in any like Sephora, Ulta, or Target. Let us do that for you, and we can expand our margins even more. Like, there was so much growth to be had with Rhode, whereas with Makeup by Mario, what else can you do other than what you've already done? And I think with Glossier, similar to this, she was a direct to consumer brand, and I feel like she started it in like such a small scale. When you have a direct to consumer relationship, I feel like it creates this vested interest from your consumer, like the social media with it all, like them hawking your product. Like you feel like you are attached to the brand if it's like you're just selling to them. I suppose like a
Yeah.
lot of that. I'm like I feel like I'm rambling, but I hope I made sense.
No, and like I think what you're saying, especially with Road, is going to come full circle by the end of Emily Weiss's story specifically, and like it's almost like this Glossier was a cautionary tale for Road to make the right choice in selling,
Yes.
and
When they did.
as we'll see.
Yes, right, right, right. Because now you guys know it's no surprise, spoiler alert, if you walk into any Sephora, you will see Glossier. But I feel like Emily or whoever was managing Glossier at the time when they decided to go into Sephora was kind of held between a rock and a hard place. She kind of had no other option because the brand was falling so hard. Whereas with Hailey Bieber, she got ahead of it and was like, no, no, no,
Yeah,
I know now is the perfect time to sell for $1 billion, and now they can expand it. I don't have to do it like
right.
for the brand. This episode is brought to you by Wild Grain. Who doesn't love carbs? We do here at Snarkbait, obviously. And Wild Green is the first bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, artisanal pastries, and fresh pastas. All items conveniently bake in 25 minutes or less because we're busy running a business that we're passionate about. Unlike many store bought options, Wild Grain uses simple ingredients you can actually pronounce, no preservatives, and no shortcuts. Wild Grain's boxes are fully customizable. In addition to their variety box, they have a gluten free box, vegan box, and a new protein box. From frozen chocolate croissants and chocolate chip cookie dough that was so easy to bake and truly so freaking delicious, you guys. Literally, you just freeze them, then bake them, to incredible fresh sourdough, rosemary focaccia that we buttered right up with artisanal butter that they sent with it too. There's truly nothing cozier than something freshly baked, and Wild Grain makes it truly so, so easy. Fresh sourdough toast with artisanal butter is the definition of a light energy object. There's nothing like having an artisan bakery in your freezer to chase away the winter chill. Now is the best time to stay in and enjoy comforting homemade meals with Wild Grain. I highly recommend giving Wild Grain a try. Right now, Wild Grain is offering our listeners $30 off your first box, plus free croissants for life when you go to wildgrain.com/snark to start your subscription today. That's $30 off your first box and free croissants for life when you visit wildgrain.com/snark, or you can use our promo code SNARK at checkout. So let's talk about Glossier as a company and just the early growth of it. So the word Glossier was thrown around as something we could have used when we were talking about what was the future of Into the Gloss, says Emily Weiss. The word gloss had been mentioned as a potential offshoot, and Weiss liked the name Glossier as rhyming and riffing off of the word dossier. One problem was the pronunciation was never clear to anyone from the outset. When I first saw the word, I assumed it was glossier, like it was more glossy than Into the Gloss. But what's interesting is a dossier is not a she said that she wanted it to be like a collection of stories, but dossier is not a collection of stories. It's a document. It's documents about someone that tells you what you need to know to define that person. So like that punny word that she intended doesn't really make
It
sense.
doesn't make any sense at all. And even people in France, she said, pronounce it incorrectly, even though it's like a riff off of a French word. They
Yeah,
just say glossier. Like they don't.
right. Like
I
Glossier.
I still call it say glossier sometimes. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. I think in the English pronunciation, it would be Glossier. But in 2014, Emily started approaching venture capitalists with ideas for expansion and including a potential Into the Gloss curated e-commerce platform. And she eventually raised $2 million in seed funding with the help of venture capitalist Kirsten Green, the founder of SF-based Forerunner Ventures. And Weiss used this initial investment to hire a small team, and ultimately she launched Glossier.com. And you have a really interesting statistic here.
Yeah, so like around this time and even after and maybe still, only 4% of VC funding went and goes to female founders. So in terms of just odds being stacked against her, Emily had a lot, and it's no surprise that it ended up being a female
Venture.
VC
Yeah.
venture. Yeah, like that took her on after many meetings and things. And yes, this, among other things, was a hurdle. So, I mean, it is extremely impressive that she was able to get financing as someone with not much of a background in terms of creating, from like a chemistry standpoint, makeup at all. Really just being
Yes.
a writer and a design person, kind of,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's and I think that often when you think about these SF venture capitalist firms or New York City like VCs, you think tech company, but in reality, and we're going to talk about this about how I think her downfall was trying to meld and platform herself and Glossier as a tech company
Hmm.
when in fact it really just is a retail brand. It's makeup. And I think that regardless, her ability to approach VC firms that normally would invest in tech companies or new, I guess in today's day and age, like AI models or LLM models. No, they took a chance on her and they invested heavily into a retail brand. And it's worth pointing out that she was going after venture capitalist firms that were similar to like Facebook, Amazon, Apple. And Emily Weiss took the startup model with the product being beauty, but most startups fail before anyone finds fame or fortune. And around 29 at the time, she became this confident, visionary admirer of what a CEO is to be, and almost like an Elizabeth Holmes, like girly pop, pink, millennial version of that. And this was around the time when Sophia Amoruso was coming up. The girl boss era, like you mentioned up top, Olivia, was everything. And I think the reason Glossier was a bit different, if we think about this time, again, it was around 2014 when she debuted Glossier. And this was before the clean girl aesthetic. This was before the King Kylie heavy makeup, like cut crease, aggressive brows, heavy baking was a thing. Glossier really inspired the 2020 post clean girl aesthetic. It hawked like very minimal products. It was a facial
Mm-hmm.
mist, a universal balm, I believe they call it balm.com, a light skin tint, which again, I feel like skin tints really didn't take off until like 2022, and a priming moisturizer. And it was packaged in this millennial pink bubble wrap pouches. And I remember these were everything. I was so excited every time I loved the Boy Brow, Glossier Boy Brow. And every time I got it shipped to my house and it came with a bubble wrap pouch, I was able to reuse that so sustainable and put like my makeup
Mm-hmm.
or my face products in it when I traveled. It was created this brand visibility, like you mentioned, AirPods cases.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry, what were we gonna say?
No, like that. And that's like exactly what she wanted, was exactly like what you did. She wanted people to reuse it and share it, trade it, sell it to other, like she was like, she's very smart in that way in terms of marketing that in how you live your everyday to day life and can reuse as packaging, whatever it is. It's very smart, very, very smart.
Agreed, because I think before Instagram Reels and traditional influencer advertising really came up, it was the traditional advertising of like billboards and TV and radio and magazines. But I think she really focused on how can I basically reuse the marketing that I already have for my consumer when Instagram, like photos are a thing. Like, how can I make sure that they take pictures and they hashtag it? Like, she was
Hmm.
literally using her consumer as the
Yeah.
advertiser. And it was like repackage, replay. Everyone was able to kind of get in on the marketing because they were excited about the product. They were waiting in line and, for hours in New York City in freezing temperatures. Like they were excited. And on her blog, she writes that she focused on this mantra of skin first, makeup second. And I wrote in this, I was like, low key, Glossier walked so Hailey Bieber could run. The no makeup look that Glossier was founded on was well before the 2016 high glam look, well before Hailey Bieber's like, just a little bit of concealer. But I feel like this kind of model of makeup only works if you have good skin.
Yeah, I think that was my issue with it. Was I was like, okay, so this foundation, whatever it is literally translucent, and the reason I wear makeup is because I have acne. Like, like, so why would I do that? That doesn't make sense. But I get it for people that I guess are flawless already. Like, you get to look shinier. That's great. But I think that's where I was like, I don't get it. Paying this much money for Vaseline, we have that at home.
Yeah, for 6.99 at Target. But again, it was the marketing. They were willing to pay for
Yeah.
elevated Vaseline that had a cool name because it was Glossier. And from an interview with the Glossy author Marissa Meltzer, she said Glossier sort of combined Clinique and Supreme. The Clinique side was that it was this easy, relatively affordable, but still aspirational beauty system that could feel like it was meant for a younger generation. The products were effective, if not insanely innovative, and the packaging and aesthetics around it felt completely of the moment and cool. And Glossier would grow by releasing products deliberately and building hype around each quote unquote drop rather than launching a comprehensive collection all at once. And of course, I had to think about the one brand that I feel like not introduced drops. I'm sure there were many ahead of its time, but Kylie Cosmetics when the lip kits came out
Yeah.
and they would say, okay, at Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, Kylie Cosmetic lip kits are dropping, and the entire site would crash and it would sell out within moments because they bred this feeling of scarcity.
Hmm. And it was like really cool and exciting if you were able to get one. And
Yes, you were
my
part of the
little
in
sister
crowd.
was obsessed with it. Yeah, it's been so smart. It's so smart, and just again building that relationship and like the excitement that maybe you share with a girlfriend over like, did you get it? Did you get it? You know, it's like concert tickets.
It is like concert tickets. It felt like Eras tour tickets if you got your hands on
Yeah.
one of these Glossier Boy Brows or Kylie Cosmetics. And to the outside world, it was a beauty brand, but to Emily, it was a combo of beauty and tech. And this point of view kind of helped Emily get the funding that Glossier really needed at the time. Emily was very fond of saying, people ask, is Glossier a tech
Mm.
company? Is it a beauty company? And I say yes. It was a little bit trendy, a little bit sexy to be a tech company in that age. And if you are a tech company, that justifies the amount of funding you're getting and can potentially raise your valuation. And she was kind of modeling it off of retail stores like Apple. She wanted to touch and experience the product. And I couldn't help but feel like when Emily Weiss is positioning Glossier as both a retail makeup brand plus a tech company, again, what about this is tech? It's inventory that you sell direct to consumer. There's nothing about this that is tech. And I couldn't help but think about Adam Newman of WeWork, who
Hmm.
was selling. I mean, it was a good company until it wasn't, until he outspent, what they were earning. But I think that Adam Newman too, he believed so much in his brand that he kept positioning WeWork as a tech company. And everyone kept saying, you're selling office space, like you're leasing office space. What about this is a tech company? And he kept trying to like push square peg, round hole and say, well, we're building technology to, reserve office space, hotel, desks, whatever. But at the end of the day, it is real estate. But you get these founders that want to push themselves in this box so badly because tech is the huge thing in a millennial like Gen Z world, but it's not at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think this like her holding on to this idea is ultimately what um kind of led to her downfall and stepping down. And I think it's like mentioning Elizabeth Holmes earlier. It's like this, it's more like the obsession with the idea of being a tech CEO
Yes.
and not, it was almost like maybe was she embarrassed to be just a beauty brand? Like it's the idea that she wanted to be the Steve Jobs. And
Yes.
it's like you, but you're simply not doing, in my opinion, I feel like now you want to do the opposite. You want to step away from tech because all these tech is going to be replaced by AI. So you want to be something that people use in their real life. So it's
Yeah.
interesting now how that trend was so popular.
Right. Right. You're so right. These founders wanted so desperately to be part of like the cool crowd, the
Hmm.
Steve Jobs, um, Steve Cook is the CEO of Apple, Evan Spiegel, but when in reality, just be what you are, be an inventory, retail, beauty brand. That's what you are. And by 2015 and 2016, she was still experiencing rapid growth. People were giving into this kind of idea that she was this tech brand. And following a huge demand post phase one, Glossier raises a Series B funding for 24 million to expand even more. And this included a permanent showroom and an investment in technology, which we're going to get into in just a moment. But they introduced more products in addition to like the core for facial mist, etc. They introduced the Boy Brow, which is a brow gel, and it launched in 2015 and sold out upon release. And I feel like this is the product. Again, I used it
Hmm.
for many years that really I feel like gave them. Again, this was kind of before the Anastasia Beverly Hills brow freeze and all these things. I feel like everyone was like, wow, like brow gel, we can swipe our brows up. This is amazing. They also introduced the Milk Jelly facial cleanser, the Cloud Paint gel blush, which, by the way, I hear is actually a really good blush. It kind of is
Really?
pigmented in a way that is like rare beauty. So I've heard.
Oh, cute.
So, this is a Glossier if you want to sponsor us.
Send
Um,
us some product.
yeah. In 2018, the sales doubled where they received Series C funding, which resulted in receiving 52 million by 2018. And in 2018, their revenue also doubled, while its direct-to-consumer business crossed over $100 million in revenue, which doubled from the year before, which being in tech myself for many years, like this level of growth is true insanity, especially for a makeup brand. This is almost unprecedented.
Hmm.
And by 2019, after a Series D round of funding, Glossier was valued at 1.2 billion. And I feel like again, this goes back to the Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos. You have these people that are valuing companies at such an insane price point that you're like, is this real? And I feel like we
Yeah.
look back at these companies, we're thinking, well, what are these investors thinking? $1.2 billion. Same with Theranos, and I think of this company Zenefits back in the day. All these companies were just like unicorn companies that were gonna take over the world, but ended up just being intensely, immensely overvalued.
Yeah. And that's the bubble got too big. It had to pop.
Exactly. In 2021, they did a Series E funding, and Glossier's final known funding round was an $80 million raise in July 2021, led by Lone Pine Capital. And let's talk more a bit. Are there anything on this, like the pages OR that you want to call out?
Um, yeah, really are just going through the funding and stuff, and that Boy Brow being their hero product, and just around this time. this was also when like Cara Delevingne had the big bushy brows and like that was such a huge trend. So it really also this product came at the exact right time. And I don't know, chicken or the egg came first of that trend, but having those big bush, almost like a tomboy look, no
Yes.
makeup was the thing. And this it's so interesting because just a couple years later we'll have like Euphoria and Kylie Cosmetics where we're gonna go over the top with everything, only to then revert once Hailey Bieber and things come around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just a to place ourselves in time. I forgot about the whole like Cara Delevingne eyebrow bushy trend.
Me too. You're so right. Too. Trends just cycle because you're right.
Hmm.
In 2015, 2014, 2015, it was the kind of tomboy look. We were wearing plaid. Remember the plaid, long sleeve plaid around our waist?
Oh my God, yes.
Like that was the trend, tomboy. And then it moved to super baddie with a thick, like I said, cut crease. And then we go back to clean girl.
Hmm.
And I think I've said this before in an episode of Snark Bait. I mean, I was much too young to understand beauty trends like in the 90s or early 2000s. Like I wasn't into makeup then. But when you go back during the Bobby Brown, like Calvin Klein era of the 90s, like that was once a
Yes.
clean girl aesthetic, like
Brooke
bronzy, glowy.
Shields,
Yes,
the
like
brows.
right. And it all kind of, it's just like a cycle. And I guarantee in a couple years, we're going to go back to that King Kylie
Hell yeah.
era, which I'm
Let's
like
go.
so in, which I'm so excited about. But like, I'm kind of nervous. I don't know how to do that kind of makeup.
Just like dye your hair blue or something. It'll be cool.
Get lip injections. So let's talk more on the marketing. From the beginning, Glossier followed a DTC, direct to consumer model. And for the direct to consumer model, well, Emily was at the helm at least. They hung on to this model for a little too long, and it requires a lot of money to find customers when you are direct to consumer. But this was well before Apple changed its privacy policy in 2021,
Yeah.
which limited data tracking. And there's only so long that a direct to consumer model can work unless you're growing at the pace that Glossier was, and then it becomes basically unscalable. Products initially sold primarily through their website, but of course there were a couple flagship like brick and mortar stores. But again, this direct to consumer model helped them control the customer experience and build strategy with buyers. It differentiated them from the typical beauty shopping strategy, like department stores, Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom, and Sephora Ulta counters. But social media played probably the biggest role in the marketing for Glossier because Glossier posted pics of real customers wearing the makeup with slogans like, "You look good." This is again with the neon signs.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
at any establishment, whether it's a restaurant, a coffee shop, Glossier, you have the neon signs that say "You look good," which
Yeah.
makes it feel approachable, relatable, and real. And customers were encouraged to share their own images of the makeup that they use and putting them on Instagram. They became brand ambassadors of their own without actually being like truly a brand ambassador. It kind of reminds me too of Brandy Melville. When people would wear Brandy Melville and you would hashtag it and you would go on Instagram, find that hashtag and look at everyone in front of like the ocean with their like cut up shorts and their backwards cap. It's like the
Yeah.
consumers were the ads.
Yeah. It's like sorority sisters wearing their letters and you're like, I want to be a part of the club. Like,
Yeah,
how do I get
yeah.
in, you know?
And I want to be featured on Glossier's Instagram. How
Yeah.
do I like take the perfect pic so that they can repost my pic
Right.
on their
Just so
Instagram
smart.
feed? Yeah, and I feel like how reposts of reels are now. I feel like it's so saturated now, but if
Hmm.
you got reposted by Glossier, if you did some kind of photo shoot and they picked up your photo and used it, you probably woke up with like thousands of more followers.
Yeah.
I have a friend, and I've mentioned her before, Jordan Younger of the Balanced Blonde. She's like an OG health and wellness, like vegan blogger from the early 2010s. And she talks about in her book, she talks about how when influencing was coming up in like 2011, she said that now if Lululemon were to tag you, a picture of you hiking in their athleisure, you'll wake up to like two followers of that.
Yeah.
But back in the day, I think she got reposted by Lululemon in like 2011 and she woke up like to tens of thousands of followers. It was a big deal to be reposted by any.
Totally.
Yeah, it was like so different. Social media was so different. And I'm so curious what it's going to look like even in a couple of years. What's going to replace reels and videos? Is it going to be full long form content like YouTube? Like I could see us going that way.
Right. Or it's also interesting to see us like reverting back to blogs now, like with the Substack and stuff. It's like
Good
it's the same as
point.
every other trend that it's so cyclical. It's like because now it's so saturated in TikTok and Instagram that it's not special anymore.
Right. And now it's like, I just want to get back to traditional reading. And then maybe we'll go back to hard copies of like newspapers. Well, people,
Newspaper.
yeah, people will have physical Substacks delivered to your doorstep. Who's to say? But I could see something like that happening. It just all comes back to like the OG. So Glossier opened its first New York City showroom in 2016 and an LA location in 2018. And the showroom was like fabulous. It was a penthouse above the Glossier offices. And she called it an adult Disneyland. Glossier also did pop-ups across the country and then across the globe. They designed it as an immersive, Instagrammable experience where fans could hang out, sample products, take pics in all of the pink stores. And I have to be reminded of there was this weird time in SF, and I don't know if it was the same in New York City or wherever you lived in like 2018, where you would have the Museum of Ice Cream or other various pop.
Yes.
What was with that?
No, this was a whole trend. And actually, Marissa goes and mentions a lot of this in her book. We had like a Van Gogh, it's all experiential museum of sex. Like,
Yeah.
that's still here. Like, all these experiential shit started to happen. And Marissa mentions that I think even Emily mentioned it of like taking note of that, of like, okay, then how do I integrate this kind of experience with selling my product?
Oh, so she really took inspiration from that trend of the
Hmm.
Museum of
Hmm.
Ice Cream, Museum of Sex. That
They
makes so much
literally
sense.
mention exactly the Museum of Ice Cream, so it's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that weird ball pit.
Like no, I would
Like,
again, I
what
don't
was
go,
that?
I can't even go into a literal store. It like
No, it's too much.
it's just gross. It's gross. I'm
yeah.
sorry. It's
Throw it
gross.
going to a ball pit, knowing how many people, God knows how many people have entered that ball pit today and even the day. I mean, it's gross. But yeah, you're right. She had to take that trend and she put it into her makeup brand, which no one else was doing at the time. So now let's kind of talk about her downfall. Mid 2020, I feel like the world was literally on fire. The COVID pandemic had just started. Black Lives Matter
Hmm.
movement
Hmm.
was huge. Everyone was calling people out. This was the time of people being called out. And a lot of what we're going to talk about with Emily Weiss makes me very reminiscent of Cupcakes and Cashmere. We did an episode on Emily, another Emily. Emily, why am I blanking on her last name?
Because I don't know it either.
I know.
Emily's another white
Another
lady.
Emily, another white lady with a founder of a beauty brand of Cupcakes and Cashmere, where she was called out in 2020 for never having hired a single non-white person, never hiring a Black
Yeah.
Indigenous person of color ever in her 15 plus years of blogging. And she had to offer an apology. And I think Emily Weiss, although it's not exactly that, faced something similar in 2020. So in 2020, former retail employees publicly accused Glossier of fostering a toxic work environment, especially for people of color and LGBTQ staff. They described that they were working in poor conditions. They suffered discriminatory treatment by customers and a dismissive response by management and demanding workplace reforms. So in the letter, they titled To Glossier, A Call for Accountability and Necessary Change, the former retail employees alleged that the company did little to intervene when they, most of them identifying as LGBTQIA and or BIPOC, reported racially charged incidents with customers. Employees also wrote that retail staffers were treated as afterthoughts to corporate employees. And these were some examples from the letter that are a bit scathing, if you ask me. A male customer, I guess, and massaged an employee without her consent. That's one. Managers permitted a woman who referred to Latinx workers as illegals. They allowed her to repeatedly enter the store, which, like, what the fuck? Dark, sinister, horrible. Don't let this woman ever enter the store again. Put her on the
Hmm.
blacklist. A group of white teens came in and applied some of the company's darkest complexion products in a gleeful blackface. Management didn't take any action against the manager who routinely confused Black, Indigenous, people of color store employees' names. While employee complaints were disregarded, customers who complained were pacified with gifts and full refunds. A woman named Lena Mohammed, a former part time employee, identified herself as a Black hijabi Muslim. Speaking to a Business Insider reporter today, she said that her manager, quote, rolled her eyes when Lina had asked for leave to celebrate the festival of Eid, EID. A second former employee of color told Business Insider in May that customers often touched her and made racist comments about her appearance, and that management just tossed off her complaints, like, stop making it a big deal. Managers asked staffers of color to put up their natural hair while working on the floor, claiming that they were told it looked messy or unprofessional, a request not made of their other white employees. And multiple times, employees raised issues of racism they faced, only to be told by management to feel empowered to walk away. And if they were uncomfortable with what was happening at work, just walk away. It's not a big deal. Dark. What was this note that you had? This is like,
I
oh
found
God.
this in the book last night and I was like, oh my God, I need to add this. So I don't know if this was in this whole thing was in a public Instagram account also. So everyone is seeing this as well.
Yes.
But I don't know if this was mentioned in there, but Marissa somehow got this story that at another time, Emily was in a meeting and she looked around and pointed and was like, I don't see any people of color in here. And an Asian employee raised her hand, was like, "Hello, really? I'm here." And she's like, and then Emily responded, "Really? You identify as a person of color?" And she goes,
Oh,
"Yes." I was like, "What?" And it was just that, and I was like, "Where was this story from?" I don't know how she got it from, but oh yeah, what?
so
That
that's
was
so
so,
bad.
that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
so bad.
It's so tone deaf, and I think we could do a whole episode on the model minority being an like me speaking as a person of color, an Asian woman living in a primarily white and Asian neighborhoods, da 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 da. This is like a thing that we experience all the time, and it could be its own episode. But that makes me laugh because it's like, oh my God, read the damn room, Emily. You're the founder and CEO. You have to have a little bit of cultural sensitivity, even if you don't necessarily believe it in your heart. At least pretend at work.
Right.
Former employees cited a lack of air conditioning in the New York showroom one summer, which was a violation of occupancy limits. They were like filling the showroom like to the like nth degree, and no one could like breathe. And they were also forced to eat lunch in a room riddled with rat waste. Like that's a biohazard, I feel.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And unfortunately, it seems like Glossier was probably not the only retail store who was operating in this way um,
I actually completely believe
for
that.
such
It's New York
little
City.
pay.
It feels like
So,
almost kind of like sweatshop vibes. I mean, they probably were being paid a lot more, but it's just the conditions in which you're working. We're not living in like 1940s America, industrial revolution America, where you're forcing people to work at no wages in like prohibited spaces.
yeah, and it's like, and they were these, they call them editors, they're the retail employees, were also trained to like interact so much with the customers and be like build that relationship from the very start so that they buy the products, blah, blah, of course.
Sure.
So when then they are being attacked, it's like, okay, you maybe you need to readjust how you train the employees for those circumstances. So it's she wasn't thinking in that way. She was thinking from the perspective of just herself, and
Yeah.
not people of all different types.
She seemed to be prioritizing the customer experience, which of course, like as a founder, you should, but also if the customer experience turns hostile, how do you uh what's the word? Prepare your employees to be able to have
Right.
those difficult conversations. Like if that's becoming a thing, you need to have some training
Train,
in
yeah.
accordance with that or
Or
how to
have people at
respond.
the leadership level who identify as BIPOC, LGBTQIA, and
Yes.
she didn't.
Right. And I feel like that's a
Which,
pretty low lift. And I feel like that's behavior that shouldn't be tolerated whatsoever. But if it's now happening, do something about it.
right. Yeah.
So after this expose on Instagram came up of all these, I don't want to use the term disgruntled employees, but pissed off employees came out.
Hmm.
Glossier had to issue a statement. So they shared publicly to their Instagram, quote, in early June, several of our retail employees emailed us to share their lived experiences of racism, anti Blackness, and transphobic behavior while working in our stores. Through many hours of Zoom calls, an investigation this summer, and most recently through at Out of the Gloss, we've heard accounts of the myriad ways the system and culture we've developed failed to create the inclusive, safe environment that they deserved. This goes against the values that inspired us to build Glossier in the first place and that we strive to live by every day. This post to start is an apology and public acknowledgement of the pain and discomfort these former colleagues experienced while working to build a brand that they believed so deeply in upon arrival. We're so sorry that we didn't create a workplace in which our retail employees felt supported in the most critical ways. And Emily says that on August 14th, 2020, she spoke with more than a dozen retail team members in July and called for a plan to build a better work environment. She also said she launched an internal investigation and asked every former retail employee for their feedback. And Glossier, as part of their apology, allocated 500K in grants for Black-owned beauty businesses and another 500K in donations. And they also launched a grant program to support entrepreneurs of color as a way to demonstrate commitment to diversity. But I feel like at this point, the damage was kind of already done. You have this beloved brand that's at this point kind of falling off, and then
Mhm.
bad publicity, bad PR gets released and acknowledged by people on the ground. And then you're like, well, fuck this brand.
Yeah, and we're all at home. We're not in the stores buying stuff at this time anyway. So it's like we hold on to a lot of these stories too because they're juicy. But you did follow through on the grant program and like the beauty bit the black owned beauty businesses that did get the grants. She did Glossier did excuse me highlight them
Yeah.
and support them, and Marissa writes about great things that happened with them. But at the time, I don't know if people really knew about it because we like to focus on the juicy stuff.
Of course. And I like that you bring up that distinction because I think with Cupcakes and Cashmere, Emily of Cupcakes and Cashmere, she did her part. Can't remember exactly if she made donations, but I remember she made a promise to her readers that we are going to focus on a more like equitable, diverse, and inclusive work environment. And that includes hiring people that are not white. And I think she did exactly that, which I think is a lot more to say than a lot of other brands. And
Hmm.
then with Emily, I think she took it even a step further and made huge donations and grants toward, like you said, black owned beauty businesses, which is great. I think that that's really what the best way to go about this, I think, is put your money where your mouth is and show that
Yeah.
you're actively trying to change the course of the conversation, change the mindset, and change businesses. Like that kind of grant could change a black owned business's life. So we
Hmm.
have to give her credit for that and commend her for that. Um, so let's talk about the product strategy mess ups. Olivia and I talked up top about how Emily tried to position herself as a tech company when it really was not that. So, as we mentioned in 2021, Glossier reached a $1.8 billion valuation. But by 2022, the venture capital firm Lone Pine, which led the Series E round, which I believe was their final series of funding, they subsequently valued it at 30% less than their original $1.8 billion valuation. So, what exactly contributed to this reduction in valuation? And they said something to the effect of private funds are not necessarily sufficiently conservative with markdowns, so it's possible that Glossier's valuation could be as low as 50% less than 1.8 billion. So it's clearly no longer a unicorn company. And again, this was right before COVID started. And then when COVID happens, all this employee disgruntled shit comes up
Hmm.
on Instagram. I feel like people were just, the reputation was getting more tarnished and tarnished. And I think it really started though before the drama in 2020 ensued. It kind of started when they did two things. First, they launched in 2019 Glossier Play, which was a sub brand, and it was supposed to be the sister brand of the minimal clean girl aesthetic. Glossier Play was instead supposed to be this bold, colorful makeup line. Think glitter eyeshadows, bright lacquer, a bright lip.
We get you. We get you.
Yeah, going out makeup, like
Fun
Urban
words.
Decay,
Yeah.
Euphoria-esque, all of that. Kylie Cosmetics-esque. And the development was far too chaotic, however. There were too many cooks in the kitchen. People were cycling in and out. Emily kept changing her mind a lot about the product development. There seemed to be not a strategy in sight. There was no brand alignment. And customers were also raising concerns that the glitter products that they were pushing for Glossier Play were not in conjunction with being biodegradable. It was clashing with the increasing eco-conscious norms, and the Glossier line was positioned as like a clean girl vibe. But then now you're using like non-biodegradable products, and it just doesn't seem like it fits with the brand that we
Hmm.
have known to love. And by 2020, this Glossier Play products were discontinued entirely. Further, along with Glossier Play, Glossier tried to make a tech platform that ended up being a huge, just like horrible investment, a huge money pit. Glossier was trying so hard to show that they were a tech brand and not just a beauty brand. Around 2018, Glossier hired some engineers and product managers to develop some kind of social shopping app, but no one knew the exact concept of what the hell this was. They were dropping so much money, making so much investment, and hiring these huge former Instagram developers and again trying to put themselves square peg round hole, push themselves into this tech space. Significant resources were pushed into this app. The tech team grew substantially. High profile tech executives were brought on board, but the app never materialized. And when Marissa Meltzer talks about in the book. She's like, when I talk with people about what exactly was this app trying to do, can you walk me through like the mission statement? What exactly was the end goal? No one could really respond to that. And I feel like back in 2019, 2020, apps were still a big thing. I remember all of the Kardashian apps as well. Like everyone was trying to start an app,
Hmm.
just like everyone is trying to start an AI brand right now. But based on your read of this book, Olivia, what do you think they were trying to do, and what were people on the ground saying about this app that were trying to develop it?
And like there were a lot of different ideas tossed around whether it was going to be some sort of communication between customers, like a Slack channel almost, which they end up having later anyway, or was it just to buy products? What was it exactly? And there was, like you said, no clarity on that. And if you can think of just the people working at Glossier at the time, and then suddenly they add in all these engineers from Facebook and Instagram trying to build something for them. And there's just also a lot of their styles of communication basically didn't mesh either. And their cultures did not align in the different things that they wanted and the language that they were speaking. They were not speaking the same language
No.
whatsoever. And there were also even just weird incidents happening in the office where like they would throw certain parties for a mile marker of some sort, and the engineers were like, "What the hell is going on? Can we get back to work?" like, and it just like didn't mesh at all. And I'm just, yeah. Some of the stories are funny, but it was just a disaster from the start. It wasn't going to work.
Yeah, it actually when I'm thinking about the personalities of a beauty brand, like people working at a Sephora or a Lancome or a Clinique or Fenty Beauty is very different from people that are working in tech. I just feel like I don't see how those two. I can imagine there's like probably friction too, because you have people that are trying to push beauty brands and social media and consumer relationships, and then you have these tech people, like these engineers, these software engineers coming from Instagram. They're like, "What the hell are you guys doing? Like, let's get back to work. What are you like?" I just feel like you're
Yeah.
putting two very different businesses together and trying to make this marriage when it doesn't work at all.
And in tech these people are very expensive because they are very good at their jobs, these engineers.
Yeah.
So to waste so much money on their talent is also just disappointing.
The tech developers were probably so embarrassed to even have Glossier on their resume. They're like, you can just delete that from the resume. Like, it's embarrassing
Literally.
because of what is a tech brand. And in addition to all this, in mid 2021, Glossier announced that it would open three new flagship stores in Seattle, LA, and London by the end of 2021, with dozens of new stores for the US and globally in the coming years. And this is right after COVID, and its existing stores had already closed in 2020, and they had already furloughed around 200 people on their retail teams. So it makes me wonder, okay, you just closed a bunch of stores and now you want to focus on opening three stores in some of the most expensive cities in the world.
Hmm.
Make it make sense. Why do you think they were doing this?
Yeah, and this is a lot of like the beginning of the end for Emily, especially in terms of her later stepping down. But yeah, I think they thought they could just bounce right back. Everyone's gonna want to rush to the stores because they were gone over COVID, in that she kept telling herself that they still were this perfect company. She would not give up the fact or confront publicly or perhaps internally as well that there were clear issues going on. She wanted to keep up this veneer that everything was still great and people are still
Yeah.
going to flock. We're going to redo all the stores. We're going to have little
Hmm.
lounges for the retail
Hmm.
salespeople, and all those things flopped so hard.
Yeah.
And also, our shopping habits were not the same post COVID, and she wasn't
So
thinking
true.
in that way
That's
at all.
so, that's so, I mean, everything changed in COVID, even people's habits of shopping, people's habits of working out, like everything changed. And when you're trying to do something with this scale in mid 2021, I mean, it's just, I think it's changed even, I think it's been a little bit back to where it was pre-COVID in 2026 where we stand today. But at this point, this just seems like a dumb decision. But I feel like when you are the founder of this brand, I'd imagine it's hard for you to see outside of anything else but just growth.
Yeah.
You're like, no, no, no. Like, what are you talking about? We can definitely do this. And everyone around you's like, Emily, it's probably not the best idea. Shut up. And she's like, no, what are you talking about? We had these great stores, even though we had to close it. People are back. They're vaccinated. People are out and about now. Let's just open the stores. And it was not the sound decision. And I think this further proved itself in 2022, where the company laid off about 80 corporate employees, which was roughly a third of its workforce in a single swoop. And a lot of these people were in the engineering and tech department
Hmm.
because, again, they realized very quickly that this app and this tech brand was quickly failing and they couldn't afford the resources that it was taking to keep up this tech veneer. Okay, let's talk about the product criticism. So in 2019, fans discovered that its popular Lash Slick mascara, advertised as vegan, actually contained animal-derived beeswax, which forced the company to offer refunds and reformulate the product. Further, its complexion products like the Perfecting Skin Tint and Stretch Concealer had only 12 shades for the skin tint, which is far, far behind the 40 plus shades offered by Fenty Beauty or Rare Beauty. And I feel like that's where these celebrity beauty brands really were able to differentiate itself before the celebrity beauty brand became super saturated. I
Hmm.
remember Fenty and Rare, and I think of brands like Kardashian brands as well, Skims and Good American. They're so size inclusive, they're so shade inclusive. And I feel like at this point, you don't have any, like, what's your excuse for only having 12 tints? There is none. It just makes you look tone deaf.
Right. And at first, like it benefited her in a way of like, I have this one translucent skin tint, so it works for everyone, but does it really work for everyone? And like that's how kind of how she advertised it at first. And that's why it was successful because it was cheap just to make one shade, one
Right.
product, or one translucent thing.
So true.
But when the culture started to adapt and change and the market demanded different things, she didn't want to evolve with them.
Yeah, she's like, no, our costs are just right. We don't need to add. You're so right about the cost though, because more shades means far more
Yeah.
cost. And I don't think she was willing to take it on because the brand was already falling. And at this point, it's hard to compete when Fenty Beauty and Rare Beauty are blowing up, and every race is like, I can get in on this brand and I have a perfect
Hmm.
shade for me.
Hmm.
And you have here that it was clear that they had over invested in the Boy Brow Hero product because the Boy Brow started to become less in vogue. And that was clear because overall sales declined after almost a quarter after 2020. And you have to also consider the timing of like, okay, you have the flagship stores that she's wanting to build, you have the tech products, you have this bad PR with the way that you're treating your employees. But also, there was this downfall of the girl boss era. And I think Sophia Amoruso of Nasty Gal, we should do an episode on her because I feel like her
Yes.
downfall is fascinating
Oh my
because
gosh,
she
yes.
prided herself so much on being the she started the girl boss thing,
Yeah.
and that was starting to be reevaluated and criticized. Sophia Amoruso, for instance, was facing a discrimination lawsuit for firing pregnant employees. Mika Agrawal of Thinks was ousted for sexual assault allegations. Away Luggage had bad workplace culture. The female CEO was no longer marked. You were no longer marked as safe if you worked with a female CEO, and it just
Mhm.
felt a little bit cringy and gendered. And I'm gonna be honest, like even working with many different employers, sometimes I do find that it is easier to report to a man because women are just, I think, objectively, they are just more emotional. Like we have more hormones and we are a bit more of emotional creatures. And I think sometimes men are just sometimes a little bit less drama. This is my own experience. I don't want to make a
Mhm.
blanket statement, but from my own corporate experience, sometimes men are easier to work with and work for. And I feel like um, there seems to be like there's a lot of drama and I think she couldn't escape it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like when you and there's also the side of it of like because you're a girl boss, quote unquote, you're trying so hard to push a certain narrative that you almost like lose sight of just like who you actually are by trying to fit into this girl boss mold of like I have to
Yeah.
do this, I have to like be this business boss bitch, and it's like just be normal, just be a boss,
Yeah.
like just be a boss. It doesn't need to be gendered, it doesn't need to be pink or and like lights or whatever. Like we can if you want, whatever. I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but it's like there's
I know what
because
you
girl
mean.
boss was a mold, then everyone was trying to fit it, and it's like why can't we all just be like a boss that is just good and normal and
Yeah. And in
yeah.
fact, I think the term girl boss or like a CEO or female founder, why do we
Mhm.
need to distinguish between the two? Just be a good boss. make sure that your employees are happy and treated well, that there's like a zero tolerance policy for bullying, harassment, all that good stuff. Focus on good margins, hire people around you that can bring your company up and grow and scale. Like that's what it should be about. But I think you're so right. I think these female founders, and to no fault of their own, really, they were under this microscope almost, it
Yeah.
felt like, to fit into this mold. But it's like at the end of the day, let's just not distinguish between a female CEO or a male CEO. It is just a CEO. And I think that has kind of been, that's why the whole like female founder, CEO, girl boss is just no longer in vogue. It's just be a good boss,
Yeah,
period.
like Tim Cook is over there being like hashtag boy boss.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's just
'Cause
it's a cringe, and it becomes
boy
almost,
boss.
dare I say, chooky.
Yes. And now
Um,
it's like, yeah, it's a joke. Like the girl boss gate what's it? Gatekeep.
Girl Boss
Gaslight
Gate. Yeah,
gaslight gatekeep girl boss.
exactly, exactly. It's becoming like a meme now because it's embarrassing. But we were so leaned into it, and I think this is why Sheryl Sandberg's lean in. Everyone's like, that didn't age well. That was a little odd. Remember?
No, I don't.
Oh, this is she
But the
was like the
motion
form.
you did was
Yeah,
beautiful.
lean in. I feel like we got to do a whole episode on Sheryl Sandberg, but some people, I think she was taught. I didn't read it, so I don't want to say this incorrectly, but I just, from what I've heard from people I know that have read it, they're like, yeah, that book is it's too much now. It didn't age well. So let's talk
Mm.
about Emily's leadership style and her stepping down as a CEO. So she ultimately was, right, the face and the driving force behind the company. She was always described as this mix of a branding genius, a perfectionist control freak. But as Glossier got bigger and bigger, her micromanagement style backfired because in the
Mhm.
early days, there were 5, 20, 40 employees. Emily could be extremely involved, but as the company grew to 200 or so, she still wanted that level of signing off on everything. She wanted her hands in every cookie jar. But when you're hiring product developers who spent time at huge brands like L'Oreal or people who had worked in supply chain at tech companies in the Bay, you kind of have to let them do their thing. Like let them do what they're good at. But I feel like Emily, because she was a founder, she was so protective of the brand and she wanted to make sure that she was involved in every conversation. And just as you get bigger, that is not possible, which is why, I mean, you see tech companies, and I've been at enough tech companies to know the people that were CFO, CEO, COO when the company just IPO'd is far different than the people that are in
Mhm.
those same positions 5 years down the road. It just, it's not to anyone's fault. It's just your experience may not lend itself as the company grows 2x. It's just not possible. But I think Emily wasn't able to really let that go. She wanted still every piece of it.
And at this
And
point, she was also like the face of like she did a lot of press and was the face of the brand. She was a part of the brand itself, almost the Andy Cohen or something to
you're right.
Bravo. That now it's like you can't get rid of her.
Yeah, it's
She's so
almost,
equated.
she, right. Emily Weiss was Glossier. Glossier was Emily Weiss. And I think of Haley Bieber as Road is Haley Bieber. And it's hard to disconnect that. And I
Yeah.
feel like a large part of the success of Glossier was the fact that she was the face. But again, that doesn't trend as well 5 years later.
Yeah.
And Emily was also known to be incredibly media savvy, almost like media trained from a very young age. She was very careful about the brand's narrative, and she would notably be on guard when talking about the company's challenges or personal matters. She would often steer away from convos like toward only talking about the positive. And even when controversies were presented and tried to be brought up, she would try and just like skirt it away. And by 2021, Emily became lumped in with other female founders who faced backlash for the company's issues, like we mentioned above. Audrey Gelman of The Wing, Yael Aflalo of Reformation, and the New York Times ran a 2022 story on the end of the girl boss era and used Emily's photo as the illustration, symbolically making her the fall from grace in the public eye. So ultimately, she knew that the writing was on the wall. She ultimately stepped down from her position as CEO of Glossier in May of 2022. So it's been nearly 4 years. And the same thing happened with her, where she stepped down temporarily, then she stepped back up as CEO again. But
Mhm.
Emily's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not scaling with the business. And I bet you the board of directors were like, you gotta step down. This is not
Right.
working anymore. And Kyle Leahy, uh, who replaced Emily in May, she worked at Nike, Cole Haan, American Express. So she has a significant experience in retail operations, global marketing, scaling brands, the exact kind of skill set that Glossier needed at this time. And Emily said, quote, I will always be Glossier's founder, but a CEO is the champion a company looks to lead it to tomorrow. The greatest companies ensure that the CEO seat is always filled with the right person to take it where it needs to go for its brightest next chapter. And Emily was also pregnant with her first child at this time, so it was a natural progression of her stepping down, but she still is involved as the executive chairwoman, mentoring the team, but she's not involved in the day to day. And now, as we kind of look at Glossier in like more of today's time, or at least in 2022, a month after Kyle Leahy became CEO, she announced a partnership to sell products at Sephora, which abandoned Glossier's direct to consumer only model. And by early 2023, Glossier products rolled out into 600 Sephora stores across the US and Canada. And it immediately helped Glossier's visibility and convenience because sales grew 80%. I do feel like the brand is kind of coming back up, albeit there was like a dark period for a time, but I do feel like going into Sephora, people are buying the products, people are into it.
Hmm.
And the company restarted it to retail stores after the pandemic hiatus. They opened a New York flagship in Soho and then opened a couple more locations in Miami, Boston, DC, and Atlanta. But by April 2023, or excuse me, by April 2023, Glossier had 12 permanent stores in operation, and they also toned down their millennial pink colors to slightly more mature hues. Even looking at this old school Glossier store, like the baby pink, the pastel blue, it's so of the time. It's like an ultra
Yeah.
white kitchen. You already know what decade this was built.
It's like the bright, bright lights.
Yeah.
Ted's, yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's more of a salmon, but
It's
now
more
it's more of a
muted.
fleshy tone. It's
It's a
a
more of
fleshy tone.
it's a fleshy tone. Um, they also expanded their products to include more shades, which is great. And they're trying out new products. They finally launched a bronzer, and they're no longer positioning themselves as a minimal makeup line of just the essentials or the see-through, translucent, you must have great skin type makeup. And they started a more inclusive ad campaign with diverse ranges of models and influences. And Bloomberg reported that Glossier's internal projection of revenue was at 275 million for 2023, most likely due to Sephora's boost of selling it in store. And Emily Weiss is currently 40. She lays low as a mom. She's still a significant shareholder in Glossier, so she'll always be a wealthy girl boss, and the brand will always be connected to her. And Emily Weiss is currently engaged to a Stripe executive named Will Gabrick, with whom she has a daughter, Clara. She was previously married to a photographer named Diego Duenas from 2016 to 2020. Oh, interesting. So she married a photographer. Definitely, she seems to be the breadwinner. And now she's married to a man who more is of her drive. And I mean,
Yeah.
not that photographers aren't driven, just like an executive CEO type guy at
Hmm.
Stripe, a huge tech company. And they have not publicly shared a wedding date or confirmed if they will even have a ceremony. But that's kind of that on Emily Weiss. I mean, honestly, I think for closing thoughts for me, she stepped down finally, and I think she probably could have done that 3 years prior. But I'm glad that whether it was at her own volition or at the request of the board, she made the right decision for the company that she built, that she drove so hard to build. And I feel like she made the right decision for herself and the company.
Yeah. I feel like part of her looking back, especially, well, obviously, hindsight being knowing that there was going to be a global pandemic, et cetera. Like when it had that $1 billion unicorn valuation, everyone wanted to buy it and she could have sold it and it would have been, I don't know, maybe she would still be a bigger part of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm sure part of her certainly regrets that. But also, I'm sure now she likes being a mom and she's still so young and she's done so much
Oh my
and she
God. Yeah.
could like be a head of something at another tech company or probably start another business if she wanted to. She's so smart and driven and still very young.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if she does anything next. People like assumed she was going to move on to something immediately, but seems like she's enjoying, well, she's very private. So we don't know. We really don't know
Yeah.
much. But
Yeah. For some reason every time I'm picturing her, I'm picturing Alexandra Daddario. I don't know why they kind of like look.
they look they do look very similar.
Yeah, I'm like trying to
She's
picture what Emily Weiss looks in my head. Like,
no,
Alexandra
she's so
Daddario.
stunning, like literally similar.
Yeah,
because
she is.
she's
Yeah.
stunning.
She's
So,
really, really pretty. I can see why she was modeling for Ralph Lauren in high school because she does have that model look. But um, no, I think that, I'm thinking back to her trying to, receive funding and getting millions of dollars from these huge like VC firms and being in these rooms at 25, 26, getting these VC firms to invest in your company. I mean, like the majority of this population, including myself, could not do that. That is a very
hmm
intimidating, scary place to be in, especially being in your 20s, having really little work experience or career experience and being able to acquire this much money. I mean, she is incredibly, incredibly intelligent, high IQ, probably high EQ. I think there's definitely some ways in which she could have improved, but you have to give these people grace. Like, I can't imagine being responsible for a company at 28, 29, 30, and having the weight of this company on your back and
hmm
not fucking things up. I mean, sometimes I
Totally.
even like think about like obviously we have you guys as a team. Like I have my own team at work, and I'm like sometimes like God, if there was ever an expose about me, I'd probably like they would probably say I'm sometimes a nightmare. Like I'm not a picnic all the time, but I feel like if you are in a position, not that I'm like anything like holding a business like Glossier, but sometimes when you're so passionate about your business, you want everything to go right. So I can
It's your
imagine
baby.
yeah, you do get aggressive sometimes. And I think you're kind of put in a hard position because as a woman, I'm not saying she's doesn't have faults. I think she could have handled a lot of these discriminatory practices at work better. But I do think that there's something to be said about giving these women grace. Like you can't be perfect. And I imagine the majority of people in this position, if not anyone in this position, if you're even lucky enough to be in this position,
hmm
would act any differently. Like it's hard. It's really hard. So
Right. Right. And to be that successful, you kind of have to be kind of crazy and lack a little bit of empathy. Like
yes,
that's just how capitalism kind of works, unfortunately. So, and it's yeah,
exactly.
it's your baby. You put your whole life into it. Of course. Of course
Right.
you're going to be a little cuckoo.
Well, no, thank you so much, Olivia,
So fun.
for being on here. You were like a natural on mic, and I know the baby snarks love it when you are here. I'm trying to think if there's any housekeeping. I mean, obviously, you guys, the live tour, we're going to be in LA on May 15th, New York on
Woohoo.
June 12th, and Chicago on June 14th. And Olivia's going to be there at every single show, as is Rachel. So we are so excited to meet you guys in real life. You guys can get tickets at x1entertainment.com/snarkbait, patreon.com/snarkbaitpod for bonus content and ad-free episodes Tuesday, Thursday, substack.com/snarkbaitpod. All of this is going to be at the link in our show notes. Olivia Hewitt, what is your handle? Tell everyone where to find you.
It's at Olive Hugh. It sounds like I love you, but it's my name. Olive OLIVEHEWWW on Instagram. If you want to
Yeah.
see just normal pics of me at weddings and stuff.
Yeah. And you will tag her in the Instagram at snarkbaitpod. We love you guys so much. Any closing thoughts though, Olivia? Like what else? I realized I didn't give you a space to say anything I missed or
No, yeah, I think we got it. And I thank you for also looping in, her journey from the hills, to now. I rewatched some of those episodes last night and she's so freaking cute. And it's just so crazy to think of what's happened since then. And really enjoyed your perspective on this, especially someone who is closer to the product and like understanding the product, because I'm kind of seeing it from I don't know, from more of the outside and like looking back and being like, oh yeah, I guess I remember this happening. But
yeah. It's
yeah.
fun to talk about because it is not just about the brand, it's about the time that the brand was relevant. And I think that's
hmm
why this type of episode is so fun for you and I because it's like a nostalgic part of our of pop culture and for our
Yeah.
lives and I'm sure for a lot of the baby snarks. So thank you so much for joining us and we will see you guys tomorrow on Substack or we'll see
Ooh,
you on Tuesday for another episode of Dark Energy Tuesday. Thank you guys so much and have a good rest of your week. Bye.
thank you. Bye.